I have a crazy story to tell you today about my experience trying to hire a Filipina caregiver here in the U.S. This story involves manipulation, greed, and twists and turns. It is not necessarily from the caregivers, but was actually someone behind the scenes that we weren't aware of. Well, hi, I'm Eric, and welcome to my Island Expats channel. In the last 6 months, my family and I went through an ordeal trying to hire a caregiver for our aging father here in California. We specifically wanted a Filipino caregiver and thought the process would be easy, but it was anything but that. So this is what happened. Well, first of all, we had to talk my dad into having a caregiver in the first place. And even though he was 92, he was sharp as a tack. He was a scientist, retired scientist from the aerospace industry. And he was still smarter than all of us at 92. So mentally, he was 100% there. But physically, his body really changed in that 92nd year of his life. So the first question was, Dad, would you prefer a male or a female caregiver? Now, my mom and I thought it should be a male because my dad's 6'2" and 180 pounds, right? It was a lot more than that, but at 92, that's where he was at. So we thought just from a practical standpoint, a male caregiver would make it easier to get him up. So he thought about the question, and it was one of these things where we had to talk him into having a caregiver in the first place. So now we kind of had to give him the choice. And he eventually said, you know what? I think I'd prefer a female caregiver. I just feel like that's what I would prefer. Maybe they'd be a little more caring and understanding to his needs. So my mom and I got a laugh out of that. So a friend of mine owns a caregiver agency, and she does a great job with the agency. And she started sending over candidates. And one of the ones that we first interviewed was a 40-year-old Filipina who had a lot of caregiver experience. And so she was a little bit quiet and a little bit distant. I was trying to figure her out. Something didn't feel quite perfect, but she had great experience and she felt comfortable with my dad. And so we thought, okay, well, let's give it a shot. I mean, if it doesn't work out for either one of you, you just go on and find another. So that was like on a Friday, and she started on Monday. And so on Monday, between myself and my mom, we trained her how to do all of the things that we need to do for my dad. And so there was a lot of things that he needed because he basically was had back issues and things like that. And so he was in his chair, his like easy chair almost all the time. He even slept in it. So the trick was to get him up and move around. And because he didn't do enough of that, he would get bed sores and that was really becoming a problem for us. So we're trying to figure all of that out. So anyway, what happens is she shows up and does a good job for the first day, and we're just kind of getting comfortable. And then the next day, it's Tuesday morning, I get this phone call at 7 a.m. when she was supposed to be there. My dad was an early riser and had a routine. He was an engineer, had breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, and dinner at 6, and you just stuck to that schedule. So, that's why they put rockets into space, because they are very, specific in how they want things. Anyway, she didn't show up for work. And about the time that she was supposed to be there, the caregiver agency called and basically said that she couldn't continue in the job because she needed more hours. I'm like, more hours? So we were trying to work with them and, we're trying to deal with like long-term care insurance and budgets. And, this isn't inexpensive to do. So at first it just seemed like it was a pretty simple issue, that she just needed more hours. But the truth comes out later, it was a lot more complicated and a pretty crazy story. And the main reason why I'm making this video, because you just wouldn't believe it until I tell you. So here's her story. She was from the Philippines. I think she was from the island of Luzon, somewhere south of Manila. And when she came over to the U.S., she was previously married to an aerospace engineer. And the good thing about the aerospace engineers, especially if they're older, they retired with a really healthy pension. And in this case, his pension was like almost $100,000 a year. So what happened, though, is the aerospace engineer was older, and over time, he passed away. Well, the good thing about the aerospace companies is they tend to take care of the spouses. And so she inherited his pension. So Filipina comes over here. Now she's got $100K per year. Pretty good shape, right? Doesn't need to work. Well, guess what happens next? I guess she got lonely because she decided to marry somebody else right after her husband had passed, and that's normal. And when she remarried another American man, what she didn't know was that the pension would be revoked, and she lost it. So here she went from being a caregiver, having to work every day. Then she gets married. He's got a healthy pension. He retires. She really doesn't have to work. And then he passes away. She loses his pension because she decides to remarry. And now she's got to go back to work again. All right, here's another twist to the crazy story. And I've never met this guy, but let me just tell you, if I did, I'd punch him in the face. And this is why. Her new husband, all right, this guy had money. He was retired. He owned several properties. But he forced her to work long hours while he stayed at home. Okay? Here's kind of the irony to the situation. This caregiver didn't return back to work for us because she wanted longer than a 4-hour shift, and that's all we could really afford was 4 hours Monday through Friday. And she was okay with it, but her husband wasn't. Now, on the surface, she'd say, okay, yeah, it's only 4 hours. No. She already has a full-time job where she works a first shift of 8 to 12 hours, depending upon the need for that particular person, first. And then she's got to go work another 4 to 6 hour shift. And she's only doing that because the new American husband is making her do that. Well, he sits at home retired. It's like slave labor. So she had called in tears saying to the caregiver agency, my husband won't let me take this job. It's not enough hours. Her husband literally wanted to have an 8 to 12 hour shift first, and then pick up another 6 to 8 hours before she came home. I mean, I don't know what he's thinking, like she's a machine or whatever. So she went away, and we had to go hire another caregiver. That's another twist on that one. And but here's the irony to this whole thing, because life sometimes it just throws you a lot of curveballs, and you just never know how it's going to happen. But to me, it was a tremendous injustice, and I wanted to go down and straighten this guy out, but it wasn't my place. And she worked for this caregiver agency, and my friend owned it, so I was kind of told to stay out of it. Well, I just got an update this week. Okay, this happened all about 6 months ago. And I just got an update this week that this husband, the second husband for her, that was so hard on her, he recently passed away. Now, I'm not happy that he passed. I just think the guy's a jerk. But here's the justice in it. She inherited everything from him and all his properties. And now she doesn't have to work. I mean, I guess that's justice. I mean, you have to decide for yourself, but I just think it's pretty crazy. So I think this lady should go out and buy a lottery ticket. Her life's not easy, but it seems to work out better than most of us. So now she's basically, I wouldn't say independently wealthy, but from a Filipina standards, they don't need a lot, really. And she's got multiple properties and all his money. And so she comes out the winner. Now, she's lost 2 husbands, and that's tragic, and I don't make light of that. But the second one, what a jerk, and unbelievable. Anyway, he's like he didn't come across me, because I would have straightened him out face to face, like this close, Okay, so since she didn't come back, all right, we're back to the first week of trying to find a caregiver and get someone to stay. I also want to mention a new association for me, and that is that I've partnered with ChristianFilipina.com. And so if you're looking for that special someone, and you want to make sure that they have a very faith-based type person with good morals and values, then Christian Filipina is a good place to go to find that special person. And that's what makes the Filipino people so very special, is that Filipino heart is what they call it. And it is different. It's more about the we than the I. It's very different than Western culture. And Christian Filipina is a great place to meet somebody. The agency sent over a second caregiver. And actually, we like the second caregiver much better than the first. She was very outgoing. She was a Filipina in her mid to late 40s, and she was very experienced and very friendly, and she got along well with my dad. And he's a nice guy, super nice guy, very soft-spoken engineer type, So she handled my dad really well, and it just seemed like a perfect fit. She worked the first 2 days, so 2 days in a row, and then on the third day, she didn't show up. You can't make this stuff up. So now I'm wondering, what is wrong with us? What are we doing wrong? I mean, we're nice people, The only reason she gave was that she was traveling from 30 minutes away, and for 4 hours a day to pay for the gas and the time, it just didn't work for her. But it didn't sit right with me because she just seemed like such a good fit for us. I wasn't going to let it go because I actually thought she was really a good fit for my family. And when you bring somebody into your home for the first time, it's weird, right? All of a sudden, you have from your own privacy to someone's there every single day. I mean, I think we ended up going 6 days a week as my dad needed the care. And of course, my mom and I are doing most of it, and then my other siblings, when they can help, they help. So anyway, I wasn't going to let this one go because I really thought she was a good fit. So I texted her directly, and I just said, hey, you seem like a good fit. You work well with her family. Why don't you let me know what the issue is and see if we can work through it? No response. Okay. Another thing I just found out this week, 6 months later. She told me she was single and that she lived by herself. Not true. She was married. I don't know why she didn't tell me that, but she was married. And there was something between her and her husband that they don't like her working in homes where there are other family members present, especially males. So it wasn't about the gas money at all. It was about the situation that she wanted. She really wanted to work for somebody that didn't have a spouse or family members at home. She just wanted to be her and the caregiver. Well, hey, we'd all love not to have a boss, but it doesn't work that way. So I really was wondering, at the time, what are we doing wrong? Is there something wrong with us? But it turns out it was my fault that she didn't want to be there because of me being present and because I was helping with my parents at that time and they needed the extra help. And then with my mom there. And that's why she didn't come back. So we had to go on to caregiver number 3. All right, caregiver number 3. Turns out there's a guy that's worked with this agency for a number of years, and he was very well known, a very kind man, around 50 years old or so. And in this case, I'm actually going to tell you his name because he lived up to it. His name is Angel, and he fully was an angel to us, an angel of mercy. And he came for about the last 4 to 6 weeks of my dad's life, and it was the toughest time for all of us. My dad had gone into the hospital for the doctor's recommendation to get a little more care than maybe we could offer. And he came out so much worse 3 weeks later. It was so disappointing because we had managed his care so much better than the hospital did. And it was really a frustration to us. My dad, being the former aerospace scientist and, very exact and specific on things, he really struggled with breathing in those last few months. He had COPD the last couple of years, and he hadn't smoked in 50 years since he was in the Army and special weapons and things like that. 50 years, and yet he had COPD in these last couple of years. So if there's any question of if any of you out there smoking, if it's going to impact you later, there is an answer that happened to him. Well, in those last days, my dad became more and more uncomfortable, and we began to realize that it was all he could do to just get through the day. And so his demands and things got more and more, and it required more of my mom. It required more of me. In the end, my dad just really wanted somebody to be there with him because he really had a hard time just breathing, and it would create this kind of anxiety. Well, at one point, he was trying to get a hold of us, and my mom and the rest of my family were over, and we were in the backyard and just having dinner as a family. And my dad was calling my mom's cell phone, and she didn't hear it. And so then I was walking by. There's like a room that he's in with these windows. And as I was walking by, my nephew noticed that my dad was waving at me, and he had looked through the window. And so I came in, and I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "How come you're not answering the cell phone?" And I said, "Did you call my cell phone?" He said, "No, I called your mother's. How come you're not answering your mother's cell phone?" So he just needed someone to be there with him, is kind of how it ended up being. He just was that point in his life. It was just very anxious. And, when you can't get a full breath, it's stressful. And then what it does is it makes you have anxiety and then hyperventilate and make it worse. You have to breathe deeply and get him to relax. So I said to him, I said, "Dad, if it's that important for you to get a hold of either me or Mom to help you, let me just get you a cell phone, an iPhone." And he thought, "Hey, that's a great idea." So at 92, he never had a smartphone. He had a laptop. He was pretty proficient on that. He was doing, he was a composer, a piano player, classical music, kind of his own genre. He was, an extreme capable talent. And so he would, in these later years, it was harder for him to play the piano anymore like he used to. And so he would create music on his laptop. It was all digital, and he would talk about the digital music. So, he was pretty savvy with computers and things like that. And so when I got him the iPhone, he was really happy about it. So the funny thing was, I tried to show him how the apps worked, and then Angel also tried to show him and spent a lot of time with him. But in the end, he just kind of switched playing solitaire on his laptop to solitaire on his iPhone. And then one time I walked in to his room, and he had the TV on, and he was watching YouTube, and he was watching how the iPhone was built and the operating system and what Steve Jobs did to pull it together. He had to understand all of the idiosyncrasies behind it, but he didn't really use the apps on it. The only time I remember he called, and actually made a call going out, was when he needed my mom early in the morning, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And he actually accidentally called my oldest daughter at about 6 a.m. And she said, "Hi, Grandpa, what's up?" And then he's like, "Oh, I need to talk to either your dad or your grandma. Can you have your grandma come here?" And she's like, "Sure." So my daughter called my mom, and then she came over and helped my dad. So it was just one of those things I thought was kind of funny. Well, anyway, despite all the difficulties that he had, he was a very kind and caring man, and even up to the end. And he became very close with Angel, our caregiver. And Angel was just such a blessing to our family. And I can't tell you what a difference it makes on those final days. We didn't really know it was the final days. And we relied upon Angel to say, "Angel, do you feel like he's slipping away from us, or what do you think is happening?" In the end, kind of what happened was he ended up getting pneumonia, and he couldn't breathe. And as bad of a time as he had at the hospital, and we all kind of vowed not to put him back there, it was so hard for him to breathe because of the pneumonia. And I said, "Dad, what do you want to do?" And he said, "Hospital." So I called the paramedics, and they came and took him away. I just want to reiterate how much Angel just was a godsend to us, especially in the most difficult moments when we needed him most. He ended up being in the hospital a few days, and after we talked to the doctors, we began to realize that he wasn't coming out. And as we gathered as a family to have this final conversation, and when we began to do that, to say, what are we going to do here? Because it's not in a good situation. My dad did us all a favor and decided on his own that it was time to go, and had us turn off all of the equipment. So, difficult time, to say the least. Anyway, when we had his memorial service, which was interesting because Dad did a lot of different things. And at one point, he was in charge of the nuclear devices that were in the Strategic Air Command in the air all the time, making sure that they would deploy at the right time if they were needed. All kinds of things, put rockets into space, lasers, like quite the career. He was a genius, remembering the things that he was as a scientist and the things that he was as a composer, musician, and also as a father. But anyway, to kind of wrap this up, it was a crazy time, and getting a good caregiver makes a big, big difference. And I was really surprised at some of the twists and turns here, but this experience really taught me a lot about caregiving and just about how the culture and the hidden family dynamics within each of our families does play into these things in a big way, as far as how people get along and helping others. And, you got to step up. And for me, I needed to step up. They needed the help. So this experience taught me a lot about finding the right caregiver and how they need to be a fit with your particular family's culture and kind of dynamics. And when we did find Angel, it was just a godsend to us and just an incredible person. So one of the things that kind of came out of this was that since a friend of mine has owned this caregiver agency for a number of years, I think like 15 years, if you happen to need a caregiver in California, whether Southern California or Northern California, feel free to reach out to me and I'll forward my friend's contact and she can give you all the ins and outs about whether you have long-term care insurance or other things that might help pay for some of the caregiving if you're at that point in your life where you have either a older parent or relative that needs that type of help. You can email me directly and I'll give you the contact information. My email is the number 4 islandexpats@gmail.com. If you happen to be in the Atlanta area, I actually have another friend that's in the same kind of business, so I can give you that if that's a help to you. All right. Well, thanks for watching this crazy story. It's a very personal story. And I just wanted to share it with you because you just never know the twists and turns that you're going to come across. But be sure to check out our other videos on Island Expats. We have anywhere from the kind of weekly expat news, giving you the highlights for the Philippines for expats and expat vloggers. And then we have various topics about the Philippines for expats. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.